favor us, your servants, whom you have called to the performance of important trusts in these islands. Father, let your blessing descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of these islands and of those whose interest you have committed to our charge. And this we beg in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen. Please be seated. Confirmation of minutes. Minister Wilkerson, if you oblige us.
Good morning, Madam President.
Good morning.
I move that the minutes of the meeting of Wednesday, 16th July, 2025 be taken as read.
Is there any objection to that motion?
Yes, there is.
Yes. Senator Marcus Jones.
My unreadiness, Madam President, is on the first page. It is noted incorrectly that Senator the Honorable Crystal Caesar asks a question to Senator Marcus Jones. The correct version should be that Senator Marcus Jones asks a question of Senator the Honorable Crystal Caesar.
Senators, is there any objection to that correction?
None on this, Madam President.
The amendment will be made. Thank you, Senator. And
Madam President, with that amendment, I move that the minutes of Wednesday, 16th of July, 2025, as amended, now be confirmed.
is there any objection to the amendment on the passage of the minutes? No. Thank you, Minister Wilkerson. Item number 3, messages. Mrs. Beal.
There are no messages, Madam President.
Thank you. Item number 4, reports of committees. There are none. Item number 5. I would just like senators to let you know that Vice President John White will not be in the session today. He has a formal commitment this morning. Announcements. Then we have a few announcements. The first, in the name of myself. Senators, I wish to announce that in accordance with the provisions of Section 24(2) and 24(3) of the Ombudsman's Act 2004, a copy of the special report entitled Between a Dock and a Hard Place, an investigation into Marine and Port's failure to implement a planning condition for a mooring registration, has been forwarded to me as the President of the Senate, and that copies of the said report are hereby tabled in the Senate for the information of senators. Senators, you can access a copy of the report on your tablet and or on the Parliament website. Thank you. And the next announcement is in the name of, the first one being in the name of Senator Lauren Bell, the Minister of Economy and Labor. Senator Bell, you can present.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Madam President. I hereby present for the information of Senate the Employment Minimum Hourly Wage Amendment Order 2025 as made by the Minister responsible for labor in exercise of the power conferred by Section 11 of the Employment Wage Commission Act 2019. Senators may access copies on their tablets and or the Parliament website.
Thank you, Senator Bell, and I believe you have a second announcement.
I do. Thank you, Madam President. I hereby present for the information of Senate the Bermuda Immigration and Protection Prohibition of Entry Number 2 Order 2025 as made by the Minister responsible for immigration in exercise of the power conferred by Section 26(1) of the Bermuda Immigration and Protection Act 1956. Senators may access copies on their tablets and or the Parliament website.
Thank you, and I believe you have a third statement, announcement. Do proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam President. I hereby present for the information of the Senate the Wage Commission recommendations for the minimum hourly wage in Bermuda, June 2025. Senators may access copies on their tablets and/or the Parliament website.
Thank you, Senator Bell. And the fourth announcement is in the name of Senator Lindsay Simmons, the Minister of Youth, Social Development, and Seniors.
Good morning, Madam President.
Morning.
Madam President, I hereby present for the information of the Senate the Human Rights Commission 2024 Annual Report. Senators may access copies of the report on their tablet and/or the parliamentary website.
Thank you, Senator Simmons. Item number 6, notices of motion. The first one is in the name of Senator the Honorable Crystal Caesar, spokesperson for Finance. Senator Caesar, you have the floor.
Sorry. Apologies, Madam President. No. Madam President,
You have a statement for her?
thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Madam President, I now introduce for the consideration the Contributory Pensions Amendment of Contributions and Benefits Order 2025.
Thank you. That's what she-
Proposed to be made by the Minister of Finance in exercise of the power conferred by Section 37 of the Contributory Pensions Act 1970. And I will move that this order be considered later in the meeting.
Thank you, Senator Caesar, spokesperson for Finance. Item number 7, petitions. There are none. Item number 8, statements. We have 2 statements this morning. The first one is in the name of the Senator Lindsay Simmons, Junior Minister for Youth, Social Development, and Seniors. Senator Simmons, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I am pleased today to lay before this honorable House the annual report of the Human Rights Commission for the year ending the 31st of December, 2024. Madam President, Human Rights Commission has a statutory remit to protect and promote human rights under the Human Rights Act 1981. The Commission's mandate involves education, the promotion of principles of non-discrimination and equality, and to investigate and endeavor to settle allegations of discrimination. Madam President, the executive officer of the Commission screens and investigates alleged contraventions of the Act, provides assistance to those who believe they have experienced discrimination, or assists those who have questions related to rights and obligations under the Human Rights Act. The Commission is both a public watchdog for human rights compliance and a resource to foster and promote human rights principles by working with stakeholders across the island, inclusive of the government, employers, service providers, landlords, community organizations, schools, and individuals. Madam President, the Commission works to further its objective of eradicating discrimination through the following means: addressing all queries related to rights in Bermuda, screening and investigating complaints of discrimination under the Human Rights Act 1981, providing dispute resolution services through mediation to help settle complaints of discrimination, referring materials complaints to the Human Rights Tribunal, reviewing policies and providing guidance with all stakeholders in support of the human rights obligation, engaging in collaborative presentations, research, and educational programming, facilitating and participating in consultations to support the evolution of human rights in Bermuda, providing educational presentations, workshops, and training tailored to meet stakeholder needs in support of their human rights, education, and compliance commitments. Providing recommendations of the government on proposed legislative amendments to ensure consistency with international standards. Supporting the independence of the Selection and Appointment Committee and the Human Rights Tribunal. Providing guidance to the government, organization, businesses, and educational institutes on the development and implementation of a human rights-based approach to legislation, policies, programs, and complaint handling mechanisms to ensure compliance. Complaint handling mechanism to ensure compliance with the Act and international human rights agreements. Madam President, included in the annual report, you will note that during the 2024 calendar year, the Commission received 179 intakes, which accounts for both complaints and queries. The Commission observed significant increases in intakes that appear to contravene the Act, with a higher volume of matters advanced through the complaint handling stage in contrast to the previous years. Of the total intakes received in 2024, 16% remain ongoing, as the remaining 84% have been resolved. Madam President, the intakes primarily identify discriminatory treatment based on the protected grounds relating to disability, 17%, sex, 15%, and ethnic or national origins, which accounted for 14%. Madam President, with the protected areas of discrimination, 27% of the intakes received related to concerns alleged contravention of Section 6.1 of the Act. The protected area of the workplace harassment, contrary to Section 6B.1 of the Act, accounted for 17% of intakes, followed by allegations of discrimination within the provisions of goods, facilities, and services, accounting for 15% of intakes received. Madam President, the annual report further states that 68% of the intakes received concerned employment and/or the workplace. This total combined matters under the protection areas in the Act, such as Section 6, Section 6B, Section 9, and matters that came to the Commission, which were identified as being employment related. The complaints field included various individuals reporting that they were sexually harassed within the workplace, were denied employment because of criminal record, were terminated because of their family status, and experienced discriminatory treatment with respect to pay because of their place of origin and/or ethnic or national origins. Madam President, on March 21st, 2024, the Commission hosted the What Can I Do? What Can We Do conference, a day dedicated to learning connections and collective actions to protect and promote human rights in Bermuda. In June 2024, the Commission launched a public consultation to gain deeper insight into the lived experience of people with disabilities. The consultation was designed to hear from people with disabilities, their families, disability activists and support services, and members of the public. It was aimed to create a platform for sharing experiences and highlighting the barriers faced while navigating life in Bermuda. And in October 2024, the Commission acknowledged the extension of the UN Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities in Bermuda. Lastly, Madam President, the annual report highlighted that Palestine continued to feature among the work of the Commission as the ongoing genocide against the Palestinians continued in 2024. The Commission joined the Peace March and gathered on Cabinet grounds with the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people, emphasizing the need for vigilance and protection rights. Madam President, I commend the officers of the Commission under the leadership of the Executive Officer for their steadfastness and commitment to the work of the Human Rights Commission. I invite this honorable host to read the annual report of the Human Rights Commission and become informed about the engagements, educational activities, and accomplishments that the Commission was involved in during 2024. Also, Madam President, I want to inform the listening public that the Selection and Appointment Committee of the Human Rights Commission is receiving applications to serve as a Human Rights Tribunal panel member. More information about this can be found at www.humanrights.bm. Madam President, includes and in accordance with Section 30A of the Human Rights Act 1981, I now lay before this Honorable House the Human Rights Commission Annual Report for the year ending the 31st of December, 2024. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Senator Lindsey Simmons, Junior Minister of Youth, Social Development, and Seniors. The second statement is in the name of Senator Lauren F. Bell, the Junior Minister for Economy and Labor. Senator Bell, you have the floor.
Good morning, Madam President and listening audience. I'm pleased to introduce to this Honorable Senate today the Wage Commission's report on recommendations for the minimum hourly wage in Bermuda. This report marks a pivotal step in our ongoing commitment to ensuring a dignified standard of living for all Bermudian workers. Madam President, members of the Senate may recall that in September 2024, the government's position paper on progressing Bermuda's minimum hourly wage rate from the current rate of $16.40 to a rate between $16.81 to $17.23 in 2025 was presented in the House. This paper underscored the government's unwavering commitment to advancing the minimum hourly wage, initially enacted on June 1st, 2023, and proposed a clear framework for its progression. Madam President, the Wage Commission, in accordance with its obligations under Sections 9 and 10 of the Employment Wage Commission Act 2019, has affirmed the government's position in this regard. Critically, the Commission has recommended that the statutory minimum hourly wage rate be increased in 2025 to $17.13. This adjustment is not merely an incremental change. It is a vital investment in our society and our economy. A minimum wage that keeps pace with the cost of living is fundamental to ensuring that full-time work provides a pathway out of poverty, rather than trapping individuals in it. This progressive approach helps to reduce reliance on social safety nets and builds a more resilient economy from the ground up. Madam President, it is anticipated that more than 2,500 workers will benefit from this adjustment, primarily those in the service and sales sectors. These workers include individuals employed in hotels and restaurants, retail workers, personal care workers, cleaners, beauticians, and domestic workers. Furthermore, Madam President, this position aligns directly with international best practices and the principles advocated by the International Labor Organization, otherwise known as the ILO. The ILO consistently emphasizes that minimum wages should be reviewed and adjusted periodically to ensure they provide a living wage, taking into account the evolving cost of living, social security, and the prevailing wage levels. Their conventions and recommendations highlight that fair minimum wages are essential for decent work, social protection, and inclusive economic development. They play a critical role in reducing inequality and enhancing social cohesion. The Commissioner's report states that the minimum hourly wage rate should be progressed by the annual average of inflation using the Consumer Price Index as the indicative measure, capped at 2.5% per year every 2 years. Taking the annual rate of inflation for 2023 and 2024 of 3.3% and 1.9% respectively, the Wage Commission proposes a statutory minimum hourly rate of $17.13, an increase of 73 cents per hour from the current rate. Additionally, Madam President, the Commissioner's report recommends that the statutory minimum hourly wage rate be reviewed every 2 years, utilizing information from the annual employment survey as well as the labor force survey. As the Commission notes, this biannual review will minimize potential business disruptions and afford employers an opportunity to adjust their operations and pricing strategies accordingly, mitigating any adverse effects on employment levels or business viability. Moreover, knowing that the wage adjustments will occur every 2 years based on an objective economic indicator allows for better long-term planning and budgeting for businesses and households alike. Madam President, the Employment Minimum Hourly Wage Amendment Order 2025, which reflects the recommendation by the Wage Commission to increase the statutory minimum hourly wage rate, has been laid in the House. It will take effect on 1st of September 2025, and the minimum hourly wage rate of $17.13 will apply. Madam President, the government wishes to express its sincere gratitude to the distinguished members of the Wage Commission, and their unwavering commitment has been instrumental in ensuring a basic standard of living for the people of Bermuda. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Lauren Bell, the Junior Minister of Economy and Labor. Moving on with our orders of the day. Item number 9, introduction of bills. There are none. Item number 10, the first reading of public bills. The following public bill has been received from the Honorable House of Assembly and is hereby read for the first time. Its title is the Corporate Income Tax Amendment Act 2025. Item number 11, first reading of private bills. There are none. Item number 12, question and question period. Senators, we will now entertain questions of the statements that were given this morning. And the first one will be the Human Rights Commission, the statement that was delivered by Senator Lindsey Simmons. Would any senator wish to ask questions? Senator Tannock, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Madam President, and good morning to members of our listening public. First, I'd like to congratulate the Bermuda Human Rights Commission for the hard work that they do in often very sensitive and touchy areas that can't be easy to investigate. I noted that the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination people with disabilities was extended to Bermuda at the end of last year, and that it's mentioned in the statement, and that the Human Rights Commission indicated that they look forward to working with the government to help implement the convention requirements. I wanted to know if there was any clear time frame or framework of how the convention requirements would be implemented, or how the Human Rights Commission would be working with the government to do so. And the background to that is that, as you would know, in this Senate, the Convention Against Elimination of Discrimination Against Women was extended to Bermuda in 2017. And a survey was supposed to have been compiled to indicate what areas were required for the island to work on. To date, that survey has not been compiled. That was in 2017. And I also note that the CEDAW Convention is not mentioned in the Human Rights Commission report. So given the fact that the Human Rights Commission is not mentioning CEDAW at all or any steps toward it, and now we've extended another convention to Bermuda, I wanted to know, are there any concrete steps that will be taken? Is there any timeline or frame of reference for how and what the Human Rights Commission will help the government to implement with a convention that aims to get rid of discrimination against people with disabilities? And I mean, by the by, if there is any update on CEDAW, even though it wasn't in the Human Rights Commission paper, it would be great to get that information as well.
Thank you, Senator Tannock. Would any other senator care to ask questions? Senator Cunningham, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to the Junior Minister for providing her statement. I'll echo the comments from Senator Tannock about the important work that the Commission does. I believe the statement talked about a significant increase in complaints over the previous year. So I would like to know, with 179 I guess they call them intakes, complaints and queries for this year. How does that relate to the previous years? And what are we seeing the main increases from? I know that they said the majority were the employment and workplace discrimination. But if I may have a supplementary to that, I'd be interested to know how long on average it takes to actually resolve one of these human rights complaints. I believe it mentioned that most were resolved in the year, but it would be interesting to know how long that takes.
Mhm. Thank you. Those are your supplementary. Would any other senator care to ask questions on this statement? Hearing none, then we'll wait for a response from Senator.
Thank you, Madam President. While I'm waiting for a response, I just want to highlight that we are merely laying the report. The commission is independent. Also, I would say that each case is individual, so some might take longer, but I'm happy to report that I believe it was 86%. 86% was closed within the year. So I think each case, it would be different lengths of time. Some might have been faster than others. And also, I just want to highlight that senators or the public are always able to write directly to the Human Rights Commission as they are independent. We are merely just laying the report in the Senate.
Senator Tannock.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. But as the former chairperson of the Human Rights Commission, what I do know is that for the executive director, the person that supervises her job description, her salary request for increases is actually the cabinet secretary. So while there is a level of independence, there has to be some oversight for implementation and development. And that's simply what I was asking for.
And again, I did say I was still waiting for answers from my technical officer, but I just wanted to highlight that for the senators and the listening public.
Thank you.
We also rely on the UK Convention Authority to work with us with our compliance as we do act yearly for their reporting obligations. And her oversight is the governor. Regarding the Convention on the Rights of Disabilities, the government is best suited to answer regarding the progression of the timelines. I think I just have one more to answer.
Senator Tannock.
Yes, thank you, Senator. I had a supplementary question. I don't know. So while you were waiting for that one, I had actually a supplementary question to Senator Cunningham's question.
Yes.
But I was waiting for the answer, but I can probably forward it now. So if you look at the 2023 Human Rights Report, it does not appear that there were any tribunals in the 2023 year. It appears that all tribunals were reported in the 2024 year. So to Senator Cunningham's question, how many or when were those tribunals that were adjudicated and finished in 2024, when did they start, and why were there no tribunals in the 2023 year?
Thank you, Senator Tannock.
Again, I want to reiterate regarding the time frame for intakes, it depends on the complexity of the complaint, responsiveness of the parties, and the volume of the matter before the commission.
Senator Simmons, are you anticipating any further responses?
Yes, it's sending me a response right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Regarding 2023, directions and preliminary hearings were held. Also, there are some matters that were resolved through mediation and didn't have to go to the tribunal. I did mention in my report that we try to do mediation first. And I believe, Madam President, that covers everything.
Senator Tannock?
Thank you, Senator Simmons. I was still waiting for the reason why the Convention Against the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women and Children was not highlighted, or any work toward it highlighted, in the Human Rights Commission report of this year, when they've highlighted the convention to assist people with disabilities. And if any work had been done with the HRC and the government towards that convention, or if it had fallen off their radar, which is why it's not in this report for this year. So it was just the CEDAW information I was waiting for.
The government will report on the work of the Gender Affairs Council, which oversees the progression of the CEDAW.
I do have a supplementary question. So does that mean that the HRC is not actively working towards any of the convention requirements of CEDAW?
We
Madam
are,
President, in the
Ma-
interest of time,
I haven't heard the
okay.
answer.
she
The
has
state,
sorry, Senator Simmons, do proceed.
the state has the obligation to adhere to the obligations. However, the nature of the commission's work addresses some of the concerns through education, advocacy, and engagement. Thank you, Madam President. I believe I answered all the questions.
Questions. Thank you, Senator Mrs. Simmons, and thank you, Senators, for your questions regarding the statement. We will now move on to the second statement that was delivered by Senator Lauren Bell, the Junior Minister for Economy and Labor, and that was advancing a fair and sustainable minimum wage for Bermuda. Would any senator care to ask questions on this statement? Yes, Senator Marcus Jones, Opposition Leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning to my fellow colleagues here in the Senate, and good morning to the listening public. First, I'd like to thank the Junior Minister for bringing the statement, advancing a fair and sustainable minimum wage for Bermuda. I believe that we all can agree that this is a very important issue within our country. My question to her will be: has the government researched and consulted with private businesses and other stakeholders to ascertain the impact that the original increase of minimum wage has affected their businesses? And I would also offer supplementary to that question: has this increase caused the size of their staff to diminish or remain the same?
Thank you. Would any other senator care to ask questions on this statement? Senator Cunningham, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you to the Junior Minister for delivering the statement. My question is around the inflation adjustment, and I think it was mentioned that it would be capped at 2.5%, which, the first part of that question is actual inflation back in 2023, although we're a few years or months behind, was actually 3.3. And so my question would be, has there been any analysis on the long-term impact of that cap? So the 2.5% every 2 years on any wage stagnation and ultimately purchasing power over time for these individuals.
And you have a
And
supplementary?
a second question.
The second question, yes.
So this government put forth the minimum wage a number of years ago, and I would just like to know what policies are there being thought about or in place that were likely to reduce underemployment, that will upskill workers and ultimately create full-time job opportunities through this minimum wage. And as a supplementary to that, what is being done to make sure that the minimum wage is not resulting in reduced hours or job losses, particularly in our seasonal sectors like hospitality? Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Cunningham. Oh, God, here we go. I know who it is in the gallery. I'm concentrating on things. I know his title. The OBA Senator Cunningham. Oh, yes, thank you. While we're waiting for the responses, I would just like to acknowledge and welcome Opposition Whip Minister Craig Cannonier, who's in the gallery. Welcome to you, sir. For the benefit of the listening audience, we're waiting for the Senator to receive responses to the questions that have been posed.
Hello, Madam President. I'd just like to interject, if appropriate, declare my interest as the chairman of the Wage Commission to the question around consultation taking place. The Wage Commission is represented by a cross-section of Bermudian society, third sector, service industry, corporate sphere have representation, and we collaborated with any organizations that indicated their interest in providing feedback around the methodology for increasing the minimum wage. Hopefully that answers the senator's question.
Thank you, Senator Fogler.
Supplemental, Madam President.
Senator Marcus Jones, yes, what is your supplemental?
I thank the junior minister for interjecting that information. It's very helpful. My only question would be, are those interactions, were they recorded where it can be viewed by the public just to see what their response was to your deliberations with them in regards to that?
Yes, as a legislative commission, official minutes are captured for all of our meetings.
Thank you. That answers your questions. Thank you.
Madam President, I do have some responses, and I thank my Senate colleague for his input on this topic.
Thank you, Senator Bell. Do proceed.
Thank you. In response to Senator Cunningham's question regarding the CPI cap on the increase to the minimum wage, as my brief and as the report from the commission has stated, that is a cap of 2.5%. She did point to the fact that the cost of living was tagged at 3.3% in 2003. And I just wanted to highlight that in 2004, the CPI was at 1.9%. As part of the long-term impact on the cap of the CPI, it is the Wage Commissioner's remit to consider and provide its recommendations on the proposed minimum hourly wage rate, and this includes the cap of the CPI into consideration. We recognize the senator did ask whether there were any studies, reports done on the impact of that cap, and we recognize that the minimum wage is newly been implemented to the country. So we will be looking forward to how that cap does impact going forward. And if just for some more background to Senator Cunningham, the page 3 of the report does detail why the cap was implemented and also speaks to the consideration of other methods used. And we do recognize the balancing act that has to be struck when we consider protection of jobs in light of the increase in minimum wage. So it is that balance that we are very cognizant of. Senator Cunningham also asked regarding upskilling, and I want to draw her reference to the work that's been done by the Department of Workforce Development. There is extensive work that's been done by various initiatives coming out of workforce development that's focused on doing exactly that, the upskilling of the Bermuda workforce. I encourage her to have a look at the work that's being done by that department. Senator Cunningham also asked a question about the loss of hours or the potential of loss of hours. The Department of Labor has not received any reports of lost hour complaints as a result of the implementation of the minimum wage rate. Employers have reported challenges with implementation of the minimum wage rate as it pertains to adjusting contracts, and has sought the advice of the Department of Labor on how that can be facilitated. Madam President, I do believe I've answered all the questions posed by my Senate colleagues with the support, of course, by
Senator
the,
Fowler.
yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Senators, that completes the questions then on the question period for the two statements that were given this morning. We will move on now with our order of business, and we arrive at item number 13, orders of the day. And the first order of the day is the second reading of the Parliamentary Election Amendment Act 2025, and that's in the name of Senator Misha Fabler, the Junior Minister for the Cabinet Office and Digital Innovation. Senator Fabler, you may present your bill.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill entitled Parliamentary Election Amendment Act 2025 be now read the second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. The purpose of the Parliamentary Election Amendment Act 2025 is to grant the Parliamentary Registrar the authority to appoint staff within the Parliamentary Registry. This amendment is a key step in supporting the ongoing reorganization of the department, which commenced in February 2024, with the aim of enhancing the operational efficiency, independence, and overall effectiveness of the office. By formalizing the registrar's staffing authority in legislation, this amendment ensures that the Parliamentary Registry can remain appropriately resourced to fulfill its critical mandate of administering elections and maintaining the Parliamentary Register, while aligning with best practices for independent electoral bodies. Madam President, this amendment comes at a time when there is increasing public expectation for electoral reform and modernization. To meet these expectations, the Parliamentary Registry must be positioned to recruit and retain the right talent and expertise, and to do so in a timely and efficient manner. Granting the registrar the authority to appoint staff and engage technical advisors ensures that the office can remain responsive to the evolving needs of the electoral system, while upholding its independence and maintaining the highest standards of electoral integrity. Madam President, the Parliamentary Election Amendment Act 2025 introduces a new clause under Section 6 of the Act to formalize the staffing arrangements within the Parliamentary Registry. This clause provides that the registrar will be supported by such number of public officers as may be required for the discharge of the registrar's functions. It further empowers the registrar to delegate specific duties, powers, or functions to staff, with the exception of the power to delegate itself. Madam President, the amendment also allows the registrar to engage technical or professional advisors as needed to assist with the specialized demands of electoral administration. Importantly, all staff appointed or engaged under this provision will be under the direct and control of the registrar the direction and control of the registrar in the performance of their duties under the Act. Madam President, this change reinforces the operational independence and flexibility of the Parliamentary Registry, ensuring the office is properly resourced and positioned to meet its constitutional responsibilities effectively. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Senator Fowler. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Cunningham, you have the floor.
Thank you, Junior Minister, for that overview. I just have a few questions on this. One around, so from the budget book, which was not too long ago, the budget book called for the PR's office to have up to 6 FTEs. Now, my understanding is this bill is potentially for advisors as well, so not necessarily full-time equivalents, but I would be interested to know how they're going to be budgeted in, and what, if there's a dedicated budget to any of these increased hiring of external advisors or full-time staff. And should I just keep going? Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. And I would also be interested, the junior minister talked about empowering the PR to delegate staff and appoint staff. And so to what extent is this, are they expecting to increase staffing around looking into absentee balloting and any data digitization to update PR records? And then I've got another question based on, I guess, electoral integrity, if you will, Madam President. So how will the registrar or the parliamentary registrar demonstrate that these powers are given or are used to enhance electoral fairness and not politicize any staffing? And I think I'd also be interested to know how these roles will be filled. Will it be through public recruitment or will it be through internal government appointments? And what would the qualifications be?
Thank you. I will endeavor to.
Madam President,
Minister.
just a point of order.
Yes.
Not a single question asked by our colleague relates to the substance of the bill in front of us. We are merely inserting the provision to enable staff to be hired. Her questions relate to things outside of
If you
the
will,
bill
they
in
relate to
front
the
of
how.
us.
They
Absolutely, which is not, the how is not in front of us. This is enabling legislation to create the framework for the registrar to be able to hire staff. And you don't believe, Madam President, that the questions are appropriate in the context of what is in front of us.
Point of clarification, Madam President.
Yes, sir.
We do take the Honorable Kim Wilkinson's point, but in listening and considering the questions that Senator Cunningham brought before this chamber, we understand that the full answers will not be made ready at this moment as passing this bill. But I think the fact that we do support this bill, let's first make that quite clear. And the questions that she raises at least allows us as the Senate chamber to consider the full context of how this amendment will impact what the parliamentary registry does. So I think she's raising it to bring about the awareness that yes, we support it, let's do it, but these questions are something to consider in the future.
Questions to be considered in future. Yes, but not at this time.
Thank you,
And
Madam
so-
President. I'm much obliged with that clarification.
Thank you, everyone. Madam President, I have some of the responses. And so in regards to the budget and the possibility of increasing headcount, any additional hires will need to be done within the constraints of the currently approved budget. And how will the registrar be used to enhance electoral fairness and ensure so the parliamentary registrar's office operates under the highest levels of integrity. I think we can all agree that there were no instances of concern raised during the most recent election, and I'd like to make sure that I send out my support to the parliamentary registrar for them carrying out their essential task. And electoral fairness is inherent to our legislation. And for Senator Cunningham's questions around recruitment, the bill allows for the parliamentary registrar to recruit staff, and the staff will still fall under the government collective bargaining agreement with the Bermuda Public Service Union and follow the usual onboarding process for employees. The difference is that the recruitment will be done by the parliamentary registrar and not the DEOD, the Central Department for Hiring. Like Central HR, I think is the short of it for the DEOD. Hopefully that answers the questions that were posed satisfactorily, Madam President.
Yes, there is a nod. So you may proceed to pass your bill.
All right. Excellent, Madam President. I move that Standing Order 26, Section 3 be suspended in respect to this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
I move that the bill entitled the Parliamentary Election Amendment Act 2025 be now read the third time.
The second time.
We've started with the second. And
All right. I missed it. Sorry.
sorry, yeah, okay, yeah. So we just I moved that to be read the third time.
Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection.
Thank you. You can catch me out here. But did I get the process wrong? I think we're good for now. Thank you. And Madam President, I move that the bill do now pass.
Is there an objection to the passage of the bill? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam
Senator Bishop
President.
Fubler and senators. We will now move on now with the second orders of the day, and that is the second reading of the Building Amendment Act 2025, and that is also in the name of Senator Misha Fubler, the Junior Minister for the Cabinet Office and Digital Innovation. Senator Fubler, when you're ready, you can move your second bill.
Thank you, Madam President. And so I now move that the bill entitled the Building Amendment Act 2025 be now read for the second time.
Is there an objection to the second reading? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I am pleased to present to my fellow senators a bill entitled the Building Amendment Act 2025. Madam President, in a ministerial statement delivered on the 30th of May in another place, Minister Urbane, the substantive minister for this ministry, spoke to a range of initiatives under consideration by the Department of Planning to address long-standing challenges in processing building permits and managing planning procedures. At that time, he committed to keeping this group of the Senate and the public informed as measures advanced, designed to streamline and modernize the planning process. Madam President, the bill before us today, while procedurally modest, sets us firmly on that path. It proposes a straightforward but important change, amending Section 23 of the Bermuda Building Act 1988 by replacing the affirmative resolution process with the negative resolution process for regulations made under that section. Section 23 empowers the minister to make regulations for carrying out the purposes of the act, including adopting or updating building codes and setting construction standards. This amendment will enable such technical regulations to be updated more efficiently without the need to refer each change back to the full House for approval, while preserving parliamentary oversight and accountability. Madam President, this change enables the ministry to act more swiftly where appropriate without compromising the high standards and safeguards the public expects. It supports the broader aim to build a planning system that is responsive, reliable, and fit for purpose. In short, it aligns with the government's commitment to be builders, not blockers, respect the time and expertise of applicants and professionals, and deliver the practical reforms the public has consistently called for and which we have a duty to implement. Madam President, one regulation that will immediately benefit from this amendment is the Competent Person Scheme, an initiative referenced in the May 30th statement. Under this scheme, suitably qualified professionals designated as competent persons will be empowered to self-certify that building works comply with applicable codes and regulations. By shifting certain responsibilities to these qualified professionals, the scheme is expected to significantly reduce reliance on inspections carried out by the department's building inspectors. This, in turn, will accelerate project timelines, reduce administrative burdens, and deliver meaningful cost savings across a wide range of building developments, all while maintaining high standards of safety and regulatory compliance. Madam President, to implement the Competent Person Scheme effectively, the legislative framework underpinning the Act must be sufficiently adaptable. This regulatory change is therefore both necessary and practical. It ensures we can move promptly to modernize the regulatory environment and support industry innovation while retaining proper oversight of standards. Timely implementation is critical. It will facilitate more efficient credentialing of professionals and help uphold rigorous safety and quality standards, informed by industry experts and professional best practices as determined by the appropriate regulatory committees. Given the technical nature of these updates, the negative resolution process is both appropriate and proportionate. Madam President, by adopting this more streamlined approach, the government is taking a decisive step towards the modernization of Bermuda's construction regulatory framework. This amendment not only supports the successful rollout of the Competent Person Scheme, but also lays the foundation for further reforms aimed at reducing delays and enhancing efficiency across the sector. Thank you, Madam President. I now invite comments from my honorable colleagues.
Thank you, Senator Fubler. Would any senator care to speak on this? Senator Tennant, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I've been here flipping furiously, and I have to say that I'm a bit annoyed with myself because I had notes on this because I thought it was coming last week, and now I don't know where I've written them down. So I have to go off the top of my head. But the gist of them, Senator Pablo, was that, to change from the to change the resolution procedure. As you know, the section that we are talking about, so the regulations that we are talking about that can be made under that section are extensive. They go with, like you said, credentialing. They also go with building permits. They go with changes to structures. And so my question was, and I had a list of everything that would be impacted by that procedure, but my question is, are we not waiving, I guess, waiving scrutiny, parliamentary scrutiny, for the sake of effecting change in one particular area? And so I understand about the credentialing and how we have to be flexible. So my question is twofold. Number one, why wouldn't we just change the resolution procedure for that area? And number two, gosh, I've lost my actual train of thought. I don't have my notes written down. I guess number two would be, oh yes, this was it. Can you indicate or give us an idea of any type of enhancements beyond credentialing to the building process, to moving forward with building permits that have been slowed down because of the current resolution procedure?
Thank you, Senator Tannock. Would any other senator care? Senator Cunningham, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. So I guess kind of following on a bit from what Senator Tannock was just saying, with this resolution change, I guess from the affirmative to the negative, I understand it allows speed, but it reduces that potential accountability because there's no longer the explicit parliamentary approval required. So my question is, how will the public know that these new regulations have passed, and how long will they have an opportunity to lodge any objections? And to follow on from that, I understand, anything that we can do to reduce or speed up the permit turnaround times is a good thing, but are there going to be benchmarks set to track these improvements with less reliance on the building inspectors and things? And then I guess on the credentialing, are our local contractors and tradespeople, small contractors, aware of these changes? And is there plan to offer the support? I believe I read somewhere that there was going to be some support, but I just wondered if that was coming independently or from the government. Thank you very much.
Would any other senator care to ask questions on this? I see MP King. While we're waiting for any other questions, I would just like to acknowledge and recognize MP King, opposition member in the gallery. Welcome to you, sir.
Madam President, while we await any potential additional questions, I think I'd like to endeavor to begin my responses.
Sir.
And it seems like both senators touched on the need for oversight. And so for the elucidation of my colleagues, as well as the listening public, the negative resolution process requires official notice, i.e. gazetting of regulation changes. And we, as members of the legislature, have the ability to make a motion for annulment of any such regulation up to 21 days after the notice has been made to the legislature, which is at the next earliest convenience. And so just as a use case, we are now preparing to go on summer break. If a regulation change were to be required under positive resolution, it could not be done so until we return in the fall. And so, and this negative resolution change allows for the change to be made. And then when it is made notice to either the other place or here in the Senate, you have the opportunity to then say, well, I don't think this is the right approach, and maybe we should not do that. And to some of the other questions around what we anticipate using the change to other enhancements to the process, as it were. The ministry anticipates using this amendment to enhance other areas of the building permit process. As these are prepared, stakeholders will be consulted and the public will be informed. And around further to this information and consultation, the department routinely meets with key stakeholder groups to obtain feedback on policy changes and procedural changes. No changes are progressed without unilateral support. Making changes is ultimately for the public benefit in respect of streamlining procedures to bring about greater efficiency. And I think we are all in agreement that there's no shortage of examples of folks saying that the Department of Planning needs to provide opportunities for reducing red tape and increasing the velocity that planning applications are approved, and to be more modern in their approaches to developing buildings, especially housing. And I think there was a question around local contractors being aware of the changes. And specifically to that, no changes are moved forward without the support of the key stakeholder groups. For example, we consult with the multiple divisions of the Chamber of Commerce, such as the Construction Division and Energy Division, both of which read out to their members with policy change ideas. And further, we consult widely with agents such as architects, engineers, solar installers, draft persons, etc. And I am just waiting on a response from the technical team around benchmarking to track improvements.
Madam President, I do have a supplemental because I did not hear the answer to my question specifically, but thank you, Senator Fabler, for
Senator
the
Tennant,
response.
yes.
Thank you. Sorry, Madam. Thank you, Madam President.
Mhm.
I just wanted to mention to Senator Fabler, thank you for his responses thus far. I don't think I heard a response to my question with regard to outside of the credentialing. Do you have an example where perhaps in the past year, having the current resolution procedure has impacted the implementation of an initiative?
Understood, Madam President. My apologies. So we are looking for an example of where, due to the positive resolution requirement to changes in regulation, we have not been able to implement changes in the planning policy or in this department's workspace. And I think I would point out the Competent Persons Initiative as one, and I will await some other examples from the technical officers.
Thank you. Senator, sorry, Minister Wilkinson, AG, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President, and good morning again to the listening public. I thought while my colleague is awaiting an answer, because I believe Senator Tannock's question may be around data as opposed to something anecdotal, I wanted to offer two things. First, certainly my support for this initiative. And it is born, as Senator Fabler has said, out of a real concern for moving progress as it relates to certainly some of the key issues facing the country, number one amongst them being housing and development. These changes certainly are a result of feedback from stakeholders with respect to how long it takes for the planning process. And so, and I'm obliged to certainly have the support of the opposition on this measure. As far as anecdotal kinds of evidence, I would offer my own particular story. In where I live, Madam President, I live in a house that was a house. It was a residence of one of Will Onion's early architectural accomplishments in Bermuda on his return to the island. My home was built in 1937. It was always a dwelling, a residential dwelling. But for 3 years, an owner used the dwelling, she applied to have it as a rest home. I was in the planning process for 2 years to have the designation of the property changed back to residential, although it was always a residence. It was sold to me as a residence. And some of the delay in that processing is actually having people come out to view the property, for which I was doing no construction whatsoever. I nevertheless had to submit a building permit. I was doing no building, a full planning process in front of the board, to do something that would otherwise be an administrative change. So that's a clear anecdotal, but a clear example. And I've heard many, many more examples of where if there was the ability, a competent person scheme, for example, to have already in place for other qualified people who are qualified as inspectors, but they may not be an inspector with the department, people who are subject to a planning application are not left waiting and waiting. It alleviates some of the challenges around staffing and having qualified people from the planning department actually get onto a site. And so that is, offering, Madam President, just a practical example of how I believe this fantastic enhancement will help average Bermudians.
Thank you, Minister Wilkerson, Minister of Justice, AG, and government leader in the Senate. I think that helps the explanatory process. Senator Marcus Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. May I just add to what Madam AG has said? We, in the opposition, we do, in fact, support this bill. We see the importance of enhancing the process, modernizing it, making it more efficient, cutting back on the time spent, as we've heard the anecdotal story from Madam AG. Anything that's going to improve the efficiency in the work that they do in the planning department, we are definitely in favor of. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Marcus Jones, opposition leader in the Senate. Yes, it's
Thank you, Madam President. A couple more responses. This around the benchmarking raised by Senator Cunningham. When developing new policy, the benefits and potential challenges are explored. And this is, of course, done in consultation with key stakeholders to flush out all potential impacts, both positive and negative. And regarding examples of delays as a result of the need for the positive resolution, I did call out the Competent Persons Act, but it is also important for us to be cognizant of the differentiation between the planning application process versus the building permit and construction process. Each process is governed by its own separate legislation. And in this case, I think the Competent Persons Initiative is definitely something that will help to add efficiency to the planning process, something that we are all very much looking forward to seeing, I think. And if there are no further questions from my colleagues, I will proceed, Madam President.
Senator Cunningham. Justice.
Sorry, I do have a supplemental from that. And so we talk about streamlining the planning process, but what you've just said has made me think, surely the planning department, and I believe they did from the budget off the top of my head, have some employee needs. But surely if we had a fully staffed and competent planning department, we wouldn't have the need for the competent persons and those kind of things. So my question is, if the planning department is properly staffed with a qualified team that can do this, why are we looking into adding additional legislation that we do support, but I'm kind of looking to get my teeth into something, and this really is way too exciting for me.
Okay, Madam President,
Pablo?
I do want to start by saying that it feels a little like I'm being asked to provide my opinion on
Mm.
the change, which I don't think is appropriate. But given there are a multitude of reasons why people who are qualified as building inspectors may choose to not work for the Department of Planning, I think us taking this approach to still incorporate them into the process to increase efficiency is a way forward. I do know anecdotally through talking to some of the consultants the planning department has had on in recent years to address the backlog are doing what is feasible within the current budgetary constraints to reduce that. And this negative resolution change to facilitate competent persons program is another opportunity to enhance the throughput of the planning department. And I would just say that I don't think the argument posed by Senator Cunningham has basis because there will always be some sort of queue unless we have infinite planners involved in the process so that we would reduce the backlog. I don't think that is feasible. And so, I think that is hopefully sufficient response to the supplementary question, Madam President.
Certainly. It now leaves you to pass your bill.
Sorry, just wanted to make one. I was not asking for your opinion. It was a planning policy question. So
Fair enough, Madam President. Although it did seem that, do I think that if we just had more people, then there wouldn't be the backlog? And I think that's more opinion based without some metrics behind it. Although I do encourage the senator to reach out to the Department of Planning to request some of those numbers so we can get a better feel for what the current backlog is, how many staff are currently working on the planning applications, and how what would be an appropriate increase in headcount to resolve that.
With that said, now you pass your bill.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. And where is it? Here we go. Madam President, I wish to thank my fellow senators for their thoughtful contributions to this debate and for the constructive spirit in which the bill has been received. And while today's amendment is procedural, its significance should not be understated. As noted, modernizing our regulatory framework is essential if we are to meet the evolving needs of the construction sector and uphold the high standards that the public rightly expects. As I said, when I tabled the bill, the competent person scheme is just one example of how this change will be applied in practice. We are already identifying additional areas where this streamlined process will allow us to act more efficiently and responsively. Madam President, one example which has been highlighted in recent weeks concerns drainage and site runoff issues. Problems that, if not addressed proactively, can have serious consequences for neighboring properties and the wider environment. And specifically, there have been instances where projects were completed in accordance with the building code and granted a certificate of use and occupancy. However, the compliance measures required to secure that certificate were subsequently removed or altered. The ability to adopt technical regulations more swiftly under the negative resolution process will enable us to implement targeted measures to prevent such issues in the future, including regulations that will require certain compliance measures, such as drainage controls and runoff barriers, to be retained and properly maintained after construction is completed and occupancy certification has been issued. Hopefully this is an additional response to Senator Tanner, who had questions around, well, what else could we do if we changed it to negative resolution? And Madam President, this is precisely the kind of practical, solutions-focused reform that the public has asked us to deliver. It strikes a balance between the need for efficiency and the imperative of maintaining rigorous standards and accountability. I'm confident that this amendment lays a solid foundation for further improvements that will benefit homeowners, developers, professionals, and the community as a whole. Again, I thank my honorable colleagues for their engagement and support. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Fabio. It just leaves you to pass your bill.
Madam President, I move that Standing Order 26, subsection 3 be suspended in respect to this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Building Amendment Act 2025 be now read the third time.
Is there any objection to that motion? Okay.
No, Madam President, I move that the bill now do pass.
Is there any objection to the passage of the bill? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you, Senator Fubler, and all senators for your input. We will now move on with the orders of the day. The third item is the second reading of the Corporate Income Tax Amendment Act 2025, and that's in the name of Senator the Honorable Crystal Caesar, spokesperson for finance. Senator Caesar, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Just trying to pull up the proper standing order to enable me to read this.
She's having problems with it.
No, I have it. I just have to pull it up. Give me 2
Oh.
seconds.
You have it in front of you
I
now.
do.
All
I
right.
do. My computer.
You can proceed.
Okay. This is not it. And that's not for that. That's for contributory pensions. Yeah. Okay. Madam President, I move that standing order 25 be granted so that the Senate may now proceed with the second reading of the bill entitled the Corporate Income Tax Amendment 2025.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, it is my distinct honor and privilege on behalf of the government to rise this morning in this honorable house to debate the bill entitled the Corporate Income Tax Amendment Number 2, Act 2025. Madam President, this bill proposes amendments to the Corporate Income Tax 2023, or the CIT Act, to clarify certain provisions, resolve interpretive issues that have arisen, and enhance the overall alignment of the legislation with international standards and administrative best practices. Madam President, by way of background, I would note that the Corporate Income Tax Act 2023 was enacted in December 2023. The CIT Act imposes a statutory tax rate of 15% on the profits of Bermuda entities that are part of multinational enterprises, or M&E groups, with total global revenues exceeding 750 euros in at least 2 of the preceding 4 fiscal years. Since that time, the Corporate Income Tax Agency has been established and is now operational. Madam President, another milestone on this journey was reached yesterday with the launch of the not yesterday, but recently with the Income Tax Agency of the CITA online. This is a secure and user-friendly digital platform developed to enable corporate taxpayers to submit their CIT payments, and is further evidence of the jurisdiction's ability to quickly and effectively deliver complex change. I would like to thank the CEO, Mervyn Skeet, MD, Louisa Lewis Ward, and all the team at the agency for this achievement. Madam President, following the decision to implement a corporate income tax, the Bermuda government acted swiftly to advance the necessary legislation. Given the complexity and technical nature of international tax matters, it was anticipated that further refinements and supplementary legislation would be needed to establish robust enforcement and compliance frameworks consistent with international best practices. Madam President, the Corporate Income Tax Agency held a public consultation on the proposed amendments to the Act from May to June 2025, which included an illustrative bill. The feedback received during the consultation process has been thoroughly reviewed and thoughtfully considered. Where appropriate, revisions have been incorporated into the legislation to address the concerns and suggestions raised by stakeholders. This approach ensures that the legislation is both practical in its application and reflective of the input from those it will affect. The proposed amendments relate to the following matters and were put forward for consideration: unit-linked insurance, short-term portfolio shareholdings, fiscal transparency election, elective reduction in intra-year taxable loss offset, location rules, including treatment of part-year BCEs, de minimis exemption, translation of non-USD denominated tax balances, clarification as to the treatment of entities for Section 9 purposes if less than 80% owned for part of the year and greater than 80% owned for another part of the year, delegation of the fund, and other minor corrections. Madam President, in addition to the substantive amendments previously outlined, a number of technical changes are also proposed. These include consequential amendments to the Corporate Income Tax Agency Act to define the term officer, as well as amendments to the Public Treasury Administration and Payments Act 1969. Specifically, it is proposed that a new section 10G be inserted into the Public Treasury Act to formally establish the Minister of Finance as responsible for the administration and management of the Tax Refund Reserve Fund, which was created under Section 50A of the CIT Act. The proposed amendment would require the minister to ensure that tax receipts are paid into the fund rather than the consolidated fund, and that all disbursements, including transfers into the consolidated fund, are made in accordance with relevant regulations. The provision would allow the minister to delegate these responsibilities to the Corporate Income Tax Agency in coordination with the Accountant General. These administrative provisions are essential to ensuring the effective and transparent operation of the Tax Refund Reserve Fund. By clearly defining the roles and responsibilities for the management of tax receipts and disbursements, the amendments support robust governance and accountability. This forms a critical part of the broader infrastructure required to implement and maintain a well-functioning corporate income tax system. Madam President, I would like to inform this Honorable House that work is well underway to finalize the regulations for the Tax Refund Reserve Fund. While the necessary provisions are being developed, the relevant legislation will be tabled in the House of Assembly at a later date. This fund represents an important component of the corporate income tax system, ensuring appropriate management and allocation of tax revenues in accordance with international standards. Madam President, in closing, I wish to emphasize that the government remains confident that the corporate income tax framework reinforces Bermuda's steadfast commitment to global compliance and transparency, while preserving the island's strong and respected international standing. The progress made to date has been greatly supported by the invaluable contributions of the International Tax Working Group, whose continued expertise and dedication remain central to this important initiative. I would like to sincerely thank everyone in the Ministry of Finance and the CITA, along with our dedicated advisors, for the time, effort, and expertise they have contributed to this work. I also extend my appreciation to the drafting team at the Attorney General's chambers for their valuable support throughout the process. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Minister. Senator the Honorable Crystal Caesar, spokesperson for Finance. And before I open to the floor, I would just like to acknowledge the Minister for the Cabinet Office and Digital Innovation, the Honorable Diala Rabane, who is in the gallery. Welcome to you, sir. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Yes, Senator Marcus Jones, opposition leader in the Senate, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. From the outset, we as the opposition do support this bill, keeping in mind and recognizing that in this new venture and this new path that this country has taken, that amendments would be necessary to the course, especially in the early stages, as we put this regime, this new corporate income tax regime together. I will leave these two caveats, and one is even at the budget time, when numbers were being presented as potential revenue coming in under this regime, we asked the question at that time if the number of multinational companies were known to be a part of this, who actually fell into this category. That question still remains on record. And we do ask those questions every time this point and amendments come up, because I believe the country needs to have some sort of idea of how many are actually a part of this regime. We appreciate, of course, the contributions of the international business community, as it does impact them directly, and the expertise that is needed from this particular sector is in fact important. We do understand also that receipts for this particular corporate income tax will be expected as early as next month in August. And my second caveat would be in regards to expected tax refunds. Is there a percentage of receipts taken that will be set aside in the event that during filing time, which I believe is going to be in January of 2026, is there a percentage of the tax receipts that will be set aside to ensure that in the event of any submissions by these participating companies, that sufficient funds will be there to satisfy those financial obligations that the government will have. Again, realizing that this is a new venture, all the eventualities that may come up may not be known at this point, but I believe we on this side would like to have a little bit more information to bring us comfort that in the outset we'll be able to take care of our obligation as a jurisdiction. But as stated from the outset, we do support this bill, this amendment. It does make sense that we have these amendments be brought to this chamber as we go through the stages of framing this corporate income tax agency. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Marcus Jones. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Tannock, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I echo Senator Jones. There have been substantial amendments already to this legislation. And what would be particularly helpful would be if there was a tracking document that perhaps could be presented to senators and to the other politicians, perhaps, that showed us the tracking of all of the amendments, maybe by some type of chart. That's a suggestion. But my first question is regarding the system that Senator and Minister Caesar mentioned that went online yesterday. I believe that 125 companies have registered, and I wanted to know if that is in line with the amount of companies that the government expected to be registered. And then my second is with regard to those questions those questions. My second question is with regard to Clause 30 and the amendment that allows the Minister of Finance to delegate the management of the tax refunds to either, and it says either and or jointly, as should be the Minister's instruction upon writing, the Attorney General's changes or the Corporate Income Tax Commission. And my concern with that amendment is that unless there will be there'll be further clarity around that, how can we avoid arbitrariness? So when will either the Accountant General or the when will either the Corporate Income Tax Agency or the Accountant General be used to manage these funds? What is the process and what is the procedure? When will the determination be made to let one body rather than the other handle them? And what will be the rationale? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tannock. Senator Cunningham, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to the Minister and Senator for bringing this forward. I just have one question, and I guess it speaks to part of what Senator Jones and Senator Tannock were talking about. With having seen all these amendments, how close are we to actually being done, given that the first payments are expected in the next month or so, and given that, as of January, they'll be reporting. I think our taxpayers now, we've obviously flipped the dial from a Bermudian tax to an international taxpayer model, and I think, are our international business partners on the island happy with it? I know that you've spoken about the collaboration and the support from the International Tax Working Group, which I assume they'd be part of. But I just want to know how much more legislation is expected in order to finalize this, because I recall things about qualifying tax credits and things that I don't think have been finalized. So my question is just how much more is there to be put in place or amended in order to go forward and continue with the understanding that, yes, there are always going to be amendments that need to be made. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Cunningham. Yeah. Senator Tannock, yes, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. I do have one supplementary question from Senator Cunningham's statement and also mine. So we have the companies that have now registered and they will be getting TINs. But as Senator Cunningham has indicated, we are now on an international tax model. Currently, companies, when they make filings to the U.S., maybe for a FATCA form, W-8 Ben E form, whatever the case might be, if you are based in Bermuda, you normally indicate, if it's not applicable to you, that you do not have a TIN number. We can no longer state that we are part of a jurisdiction that does not give out TIN numbers. So now that we have the system up and running for the companies that are registered, I haven't seen it mentioned anywhere in the legislation and nowhere in these amendments. How will we address the issue of handing out or not handing out TIN numbers for companies that don't fall in scope but can no longer claim to be part of a jurisdiction that doesn't issue them?
Thank you, Senator Tannock. That's okay. Don't worry yourself. Just trying to remember if she is a if she is a anyway, I'll just acknowledge that she was helped by the remember if she is call it
Okay, Madam President, I have some answers for my colleagues, specifically to Senator Tannock. Some of the questions that she asked, it's actually quite highly sensitive information, and so will be happy to give a specific briefing to her at a later date if she doesn't mind. And we have actually taken those questions down for further response. Senator Cunningham did ask about how do other stakeholders feel about some of the amendments that are being made. We have actually, there has been wide consultation or robust consultation with them. And so these amendments actually incorporate some of those concerns, some of those ideas, et cetera, from stakeholders. So it would be that they are quite satisfied with the amendments as they currently stand. And then there was also the question with regard to the refundable tax legislation in terms of where we are with that. I could definitely indicate that that legislative framework is actively being developed with legislation anticipated by December 1st, 2025. It is quite complex and technical, and the ministry is undertaking a thorough and diligent process to ensure that any framework that's put into place is efficient, effective, and beneficial to both the government and any key stakeholders. It is our objective to ensure that Bermuda's regime is while reinforcing our reputation and attractiveness for businesses, we're ensuring that it is in alignment with broader tax implications and policies, et cetera. So it is still underway as it pertains to the legislation for the QRTC, or the Qualified Refundable Tax Credit regime. I believe there was a question with regard to how we are accounting for any tax refunds, and again, that would be incorporated in the legislative framework and or policies that are being developed. And as I previously stated, this legislation is scheduled for enactment by December 1st. And obviously, we are continuing to liaise and engage with stakeholders such that we can ensure that it is robust and fully vetted before it is brought forth. But in due time, we will definitely have sight of that regime and that framework. I believe that answers the majority of questions. Madam President, if there's anything further, I welcome those questions at this time.
Senator Cunningham, you have a
I just have a supplemental to one of those answers. You talked about how some of the framework's still being established and going to be before the legislature. But if companies are already declaring or paying part of their proceeds in August and then something else changes, will there be an expectation that some of these changes will be retroactive? So they might, well, I would hope, end up owing less, but maybe end up owing more than they had anticipated when they first filed in August.
And I thank you for that question. That's actually a good consideration. And I'm like I said, some of the calculations are quite complex and considerations are quite complex. And I am more than sure that this will be under consideration, any retroactive, et cetera, in due course. But as I said, it's still in process. But again, thank you for that. So because if it hasn't been considered, but I doubt that it has not, that intervention is appreciated, but we will definitely be able to give additional insight as we get them for that.
Senator Cunningham. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Senator Tannock.
I know it's easy to confuse the two.
No. We're
both
it's not
wearing St. George's colors.
There's
so
no
I get it.
There's no confusion on my part.
As you yourself, Madam President, I see you wearing St. George's proudly.
You have a further
Point of order.
Yes.
This is a Somerset Senate. Thank you very much.
senators. We'll get down to the business. Senator Tannock, you have an additional question?
I do, Madam President. Thank you very much. So I guess I may have put the cart before the horse when I asked about the tax information number. So I was assuming that because you went live earlier this week and companies registered, that when they registered, they might have gotten a number. So I thought that what that might have meant was that if other companies who don't register, for instance, have to fill out paperwork, which we have to all the time and remit to the US, it would be difficult for us to now say we're in a jurisdiction that doesn't give out a number, which is why we don't have one, which is what we always used to say. But if we are not at the point yet where we're giving out tax ID numbers, then my concern doesn't really come into play yet. But I'm just thinking about the next, even now, we fill out paperwork all of the time to send to the states and we indicate, listen, we don't have the number you're asking for, but I want to make sure that companies who aren't in scope can still safely say that, or if there is an alternative, if numbers are already being given out. That's so, I guess, some clarity as to the thought behind my question, which I understand if no numbers are given out, it doesn't come into play yet.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Senator Tannock.
Yes, again, thank you, Senator Tannock. I'm familiar with those forms as well. And so in order obviously to keep track of those that are registering, there would be some sort of identification number. Now, how that will play out jurisdictionally and used as formal identification numbers for cross jurisdictions, again, that is something that is still under consideration at this point. So obviously there would need to be conversations with other tax jurisdictions as to how those numbers would be used, or if at all. So the numbers are being provided, but whether they would be official numbers that would be potentially used as tax identification numbers for other filing purposes, that remains to be seen. Again, we are still in the process of bearing out what that looks like and how that they will be used. And again, we take on board your points. I certainly believe that the team does have that under consideration, but at this point, as to how specifically it will be used cross jurisdictionally, bear with us as that consideration is in process.
So thank you. So Senator Crystal Caesar, spokesperson for finance, you can pass your bill.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that Standing Order 26 be suspended in respect of this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Corporate Income Tax Amendment Act 2025 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to a second reading? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Corporate Income Tax Amendment Act 2025 be now read a third time.
Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the bill do now pass.
It has been moved that the bill do now pass. Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you. And I would just like to also acknowledge and thank Ms. Genesis Iris from the Minister, who's the policy analyst from the Ministry of Finance, who has been very helpful in responding, helping the minister respond to the questions. Thank you for your attendance this morning. Thank you, Senators. We'll now move on to the final item on our orders of the day, and that is consideration of the contributory pensions amendment of contribution and benefits order 2025. And that is also in the name of Senator the Honorable Crystal C. Caesar, spokesperson for finance. So ministers.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam
Ready?
President, I move that the provisions of Standing Order 71-2 be suspended in respect of the Contributory Pensions Amendment of Benefits and Validation Act 2025.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the Senate do take under consideration the Contributory Pensions Amendment of Contributions and Benefits Order 2025, proposed to be made by the Minister of Finance in exercise of the power conferred by Section 37 of the Contributory Pensions Act 1970.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I come before this honorable House with a message of reassurance, respect, and responsibility. It is my duty today, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, the Honorable David Burt, JPMP, and my privilege to present the Contributory Pensions Amendment of Benefits Order 2025. Madam President, Bermuda seniors are the architects of our modern nation. They worked tirelessly, raised families, supported communities, and laid the foundation of our progress. Now, in their later years, it is our moral obligation to ensure that they are cared for with dignity and gratitude. This government's commitment to our seniors is unwavering. Today's legislation is more than an amendment. It is an affirmation that their needs are not forgotten and their well-being remains our priority. Madam President, Bermuda provides retired individuals with a combination of social insurance benefit from the Contributory Pensions Fund, or the CPF, and a mandatory occupational pension from their employer. Ideally, the social insurance benefit would provide a first tier or basic pension, which would be supplemented by the second tier or occupational pension. Through no fault of their own, however, several retired persons are currently not receiving an occupational pension and therefore relying on the social insurance benefit as their sole source of income. Madam President, this situation could be better. And the government continues to work to ensure that seniors who rely heavily on their social insurance benefits have a dependable resource. Madam President, notwithstanding the above, the CPF benefit provides an important base retirement income. Currently, the maximum pension paid under the CPF is around 29% of the median annual gross earnings for Bermudians, as indicated in the Bermuda Job Market Employment Brief produced by the Department of Statistics in September 2024. This compares closely to the UK, where the full basic state pension as a percentage of average earnings is around 30%. In the Bahamas, it's 28%, Jamaica, 20%, Barbados, 30%, and Trinidad and Tobago, 29%. In the Cayman Islands, the structure of retirement benefits differs due to the absence of a government-provided contributory pension. Cayman operates a mandatory private pension scheme, which we also have as an addition. Madam President, the proposal is straightforward but meaningful. All pensions and benefits provided under the Contributory Pensions Act 1970 will be increased by 2.3% effective August 16th, 2025. The adjustment will be reflected in the payment issued on September 15th. This adjustment directly matches the 2.3% rise in Bermuda's cost of living, ensuring that our seniors are not disadvantaged by inflation. Madam President, there are 5 types of benefits payable under the Contributory Pensions Act 1970. All the pensions and allowances will be increased by 2.3%, and these pensions and allowances are the contributory old age pension, contributory widows or widowers allowance, contributory disability benefit, non-contributory old age pension, and non-contributory disability benefit. In practical terms, the basic contributory pension will rise from $1,179 per month to $1,206 per month. The maximum contributory pension will increase to approximately $1,752 per month. Some 15,086 of our fellow Bermudians depend on these benefits. From September 15th, 2025, they will see their pensions rise, offering not just financial support, but peace of mind. Madam President, in July 2018, the PLP government formally pledged to raise pensions every year at the inflation rate, a commitment which they have abided with. They've abided by, I should say, except for 2020. And of course, that was during the COVID pandemic strike. And the government at the time promoted the government to exercise fiscal conditions amidst economic uncertainty. The government compensated with a broader increase in 2021 as a result. The combined inflation for 2020 and 2021 was about 1.5%. However, in 2021, government increased pension to 0.75%. Madam President, I am proud to remind this Honorable House that this marks the 7th increase by the Progressive Labor Party government since 2017. And in each instance, we have acted decisively to protect the purchasing power and dignity of our seniors. Since 2017, we have delivered 1.75 of an increase in 2017, 1.4 increase in 2018, 1.2 percent increase was done in 2020 for 2019 and 20, a 2.75% increase in 2020 for the years 21 and 22, 4.1% increase in 2023, 2.4 in 24, and 2.3% increase now in 2025. This consistent record stands in contrast to the former government who allowed seniors to wait 5 years without relief. Madam President, compassion alone does not secure pensions. Financial responsibility is essential. The contributory pension fund remains strong, with net assets exceeding $2.25 billion as of March 31st, 2025, 10 times the annual value of benefit payments. Even without further contributions, the fund could sustain payments for almost 10 years. Madam President, the government, however, believes it must strengthen the fund's position. Contributions will be increased by 4.81% in August 2025. This is 2.51% more than the benefits increase proposed for the year. Weekly contributions for those under 65 will increase from $71.84 to $75.30, split equally between employer and employee. For those over 65, contributions will rise from $35.92 to $37.65, paid entirely by the employer and none by the employee. Madam President, this modest increase ensures that we protect future generations of pensioners while honoring current beneficiaries. In this regard, Madam President, the government's sound investment strategy for pension fund assets is achieving good results. As of March 31st, 2025, the contributory pensions fund investment stood at $2.099 billion. The nominal rate of return for the 10 years preceding March 31st, 2025 has been 5.8%. Madam President, as evidenced by the 2023 actuarial report tabled in the Senate, the viability of the fund in the short term to medium term is good, with the fund being positive for the next 19 years until 2042. However, in addressing the long-term challenges associated with pensions generally, the ministry will continue to monitor the performance of the fund. It should also be noted that the funding policy for the CPF is based on sustainable funding rather than on full actuarial funding. That is, contributions plus investment income should cover benefits and administration expenses on an annual basis, while the fund builds sufficient reserves to cover several years of benefits and expenses to withstand future adverse circumstances. Madam President, we must remain vigilant. Bermuda, like many countries, faces demographic challenges. I note the important work done by the Pension Reform Committee. This committee includes officials from the Ministry of Finance and the PFIC, or the Public Funds Investment Committee, assisted by consultants, McKinsey and Company, and TELUS Health, which have been assessing the current state of the PSSF and the CPF while evaluating options to address the government pension funds. Madam President, this government will never shirk its duties to Bermuda seniors. Each pension increase, each policy change is a demonstration of our care and our commitment to them. To the seniors listening today, this government sees you, this government values you, and this government will always stand with you. Today's legislation is not merely about finances, it is about fairness, it is about dignity. It is about ensuring that those who built Bermuda can retire in security and peace. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Senator Crystal Caesar, spokesperson for finance. Honorable Crystal Caesar, I should say. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Yes, Senator Marcus Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I thank the Minister of Education and spokesman for finance to bring this bill to this chamber. We understand that this pension fund that has been a concern for the community for a number of years now is not as funded as it should be. So we can definitely understand why the government has had to bring these increases as an amendment to this contributory pension order. My only observation would be, and the minister has given us ample information and I guess a good grade to the fund managers that actually manage these funds. I would be curious to see what percentage of these funds are actually managed by local fund managers and how much is overseas. Now, granted, she's not going to have those answers right at the moment, but I'm just posing that and throwing that out there because when assessing the performances of the fund managers on these assets, I believe that consideration has great importance because it leads me to the next question is, with these additions and increases to contributions, which before this point was good up until 2042, I'm sure the government is going to be anticipating increases over the next few years, and B, how much will these contributions, increased contributions, actually extend beyond 2042? I mean, these are questions that comes to mind as I looked at this bill. We do support it. We know why it needs to be done, but as as an opposition that's looking to see all the different angles and how this will impact our seniors going forward, of course, we are very much interested in the performance of the fund managers locally or overseas, and how much these increases will in fact extend the funds being available beyond 2042. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Marcus Jones. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Hearing none, then Ministers, back to you.
Thank you, Madam President, and I thank you to my colleague, and he is correct. I don't have specific answers as to how many pension funds are managed locally versus overseas, but I have noted that, and that is something I can get from the technical team and provide. In addition, the question was around beyond the 19 years that we've already projected up to 2042. That's a good question, Senator Jones. I can say before me, and what I have in front of me is up to that point. So again, that is something that I'm sure that has been under consideration beyond that. But again, that is something that I would have to get from them as to, I'm sure they do modeling out longer than that, but at the very least, it's for the next 19 years. Yeah. So I can undertake to see what additional modeling and or projections there may be beyond that.
And with that being the only question, it's for you to pass your bill.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the said draft order be approved and that the following message be sent to His Excellency the Governor. May it please Your Excellency, the Senate, having had under consideration the draft order entitled the Contributory Pensions Amendment of Contributions and Benefits Order 2025, proposed to be made by the Minister of Finance in exercise of the power conferred by Section 37 of the Contributory Pensions Act 1970, has the honor to inform Your Excellency that the Senate has approved the said draft order.
Thank you, and there is no objection to the message being sent. So thank you for.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senators, for that. Concludes our orders of the day. Item number 14 is motions. There are none. And item number 15 on our order, congratulatory and or obituary speeches. Senator Cunningham, you have the floor. First off the bat.
Thank you, Madam President. Firstly, I would like to start by offering condolences on behalf of the One Bermuda Alliance and my primarily my opposition Senate colleagues to the Harvey family in St. George's. The Harvey family name in St. George's is synonymous with the St. George's Cricket Club. So but Dale spent his life caring for others, and I think you could describe him as the definition of a gentle giant. But at this time of year, particularly, you'd always see him driving his car around town with at least 8 cup match flags attached in support of the best team, St. George's. I just want to send condolences to his mother, Margaret, who has now sadly lost 3 of her children, and send condolences to Tommy and the rest of his entire Harvey family in St. George's. I would also now like to extend my congratulations to Team Bermuda for their performance at the 2025 Island Games in Scotland. We secured 5 medals. Both our football teams, under 23s men and women, secured the gold medal. Yep. And we also had a silver medal in squash with Taylor Carrick, Jack Brislane in the 5,000 meters, and then Sienna Mascara, an 18-year-old, coming up with bronze in the golf. I actually flew back with a number of the athletes on Sunday and found out that the 18-year-old had only picked up golf about 2 or 3 years ago. So there is hope for the rest of us with our golf game. But I just wanted to offer congratulations to Team Bermuda. We're always proud when our athletes go on the international stage. So well done. And then because I was not here last year, and everyone in this chamber knows how passionate I am about scholarships, I thought I would thank the minister for her statement last week And I'd also like to acknowledge and thank Shanae Smith and her team at the Ministry of Education for their work behind the scenes. But I also want to congratulate all of the Scholarship Award winners for the 2025 academic year. Many of them are obviously government, but a lot are private and institutional scholarships. So to each recipient, I'm just going to say, well done. Your recognition is well deserved. And I wish them all the best as they prepare to go on with the next chapter. Some are obviously going into not freshman years, but for those going into freshman year, I would say when you're packing, think about taking a little piece of Bermuda with you. So go to one of the tourist shops and get a postcard or a flag or something, just something to keep you remembering home when you're away. And then for those students that maybe missed out on awards, don't be discouraged. I think the journey doesn't possibly end here. You can keep going next year, and your potential is no less valuable. So I tell those to keep striving and stay open to the opportunities and believe in yourself. And I think Bermuda can say we're proud of each and every one of them. Finally, Madam President, I would like to send my best wishes to the St. George's Cup Match cricket team. I think this is the year for us to bring it home. And with that, in closing, I would like to wish my Senate colleagues, the listening audience, and all of Bermuda a very happy and safe cup match, and may St. George's win the cup.
Senator Lindsay Simmons, you have the floor. I saw you first.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I give condolences to the family of Josh Ferris. He was a student at Cedar Bridge. He unfortunately lost his life on July 17th. He was, as the chairman of Cedar Bridge, I go up there often, and Josh was larger than life. I did speak to his father yesterday with Principal Caesar, and Cedar Bridge is mourning. Minister Caesar gives her condolences as well. And from the PLP, we give condolences to this family, to his father Bruno and his mother Ingrid. We are here for you and we pray for you during this difficult time. Thank you, Madam President. And I do want to, I don't necessarily agree most of the time with the OBA, but you're on point today with your last comment. Madam President, as somebody that is leading the chamber, you are beautiful in your blue and blue. So I see I did a quick count. We have 6 in here for St. George's, 5 for Somerset. Minister Caesar is not impressed, but we will take him the cup. Thank you so much. So congratulations to all cup match people that get selected for the team, but I pray that we bring the cup in finally. I'm not a sore loser, but we definitely need to bring the cup this year. Thank you. So congratulations to everybody. And happy cup match.
Senator Misha Fabler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to start by associating myself with Senator Cunningham's remarks in regards to congratulating the Bermudian team, the contingent that went out to the Island Games, most especially to our women's and men's football team who returned with gold medals. They are actually beneficiaries of the FIFA Talent Academy, which leads me into my second congratulations to the Bermuda Football Association and the several coaches who received accreditation on Monday evening. The BFA has been officially recognized by FIFA as a talent academy. We're actually the 7th member association out of 150 or more member associations. So kudos to the BFA for their efforts in establishing that program and the example of its success and hopefully future success that we've seen with our teams who have returned with gold medals from the Island Games. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Senator Fabler. Would any other senator care to speak? Sorry.
Thank you.
Minister Caesar?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I would like to give condolences in advance to all senators who are for the St. George's team. I do feel sorry for you and your delusions of grandeur, but we can all dream. I did, however, want to just say that, during this time, this is very festive. And I think this shows the country at its best. We are all we represent our teams. The country actually feels lighter. It feels happy. I do want to take the time to just say happy cup match to Bermuda. We know who the winners and the victors are. Somerset. And but I did know, on a serious note, I do wish all in the chamber and the listening public a happy cup match. Remember the reason that we are celebrating. It is not just for us to party, but us to celebrate culture and freedom of the enslaved. So with that, Madam President, I finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Caesar. Would any other senator? Senator Tannock, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. I don't need to say anything else about the teams, but what I will say, as just a comment to Minister Senator Caesar's words, that remembering the reason for the season, and with that, I picked up a wonderful deck of cards from a local company with regard to cup match history. I found them at Caesar's Pharmacy in Somerset. I don't know if they're available anywhere else, but it's a specific cup match edition of Bermuda history cards that are plain deck size. And so I'm sure the folks at Bermuda Bookstore can source them if they don't already have them. And I wish I would have taken a picture of the name of the company. But if you are interested in cup match history and a fun way to learn with your family, there are cup match history cards. They are playing size pack. And I got my pack at Caesar's Pharmacy.
Thank you for that promotion. I think that's excellent to hear. Would any other senator care to speak? Then, Madam AG, Minister.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me start with joining certainly Senator Cunningham in the condolences to the family, the Harvey family. Dale was a classmate of mine, the class of 1979 at the Barclay Institute, and our entire class has been in mourning over his passing. He was a person, he was always the same whenever you saw him. I'd usually see him if I was going east, probably at Shelley Bay, driving his truck. And obviously his sister Esther was in high school at the same time as us. And as you mentioned, she'd also passed away not that long ago. So the Harvey family certainly are in thoughts and prayers. Madam President, in terms of congratulations, let me first join again with Senator Cunningham in congratulating the Bermuda teams all across the disciplines for, doing the country so well and putting us on the map. I believe these athletes carried themselves admirably across all of the disciplines. In relation to sports, though, I have to say, Madam President, in this forum, I'd like to congratulate umpire Precious Smith on her accomplishment at the Eastern Counties on Saturday in being the first female to officiate at the counties. And she is an attorney, but she is also clearly a cricket player and a cricket aficionado. And so I traveled from Somerset to St. David's just to mark the occasion and to support her efforts in being out there. Needless to say, the game was a nail biter as well. And I'm not going to say who I was rooting for. I was dressed in red and white, though. Yes, Madam President, and in the vein of congratulations and Bermudian athletes of another sort, I had the distinct pleasure of attending the Earl Cameron Theatre last Friday to see the ballet performance of the Cannoneer Watson children. So there was Ravi Cannoneer Watson, his sister Vidya, and their younger sister Ananya. they were absolutely fabulous. They came to Bermuda. They brought friends of theirs who were professional dancers. And I think this island got to see dancers from the Zurich Ballet, the English National Ballet, obviously the Royal Ballet, the Hungarian National Ballet, perform at an incredible standard. And so I just say congratulations to the Cannonair Watson children, and particularly to their parents who have invested so much, and to see kind of the product of their labor and their love on display in this form. And it certainly was inspiring all of the children who were in the room as well, to see dancers of this standard who, you know, cross every UN complexion, performing at the highest standards on our little island. I was moved to see that they will be undertaking to do this on an annual basis. And I believe everybody who saw the performance, the one thing that people said was they hoped that it would be on for more than one night when they return to do this next year. So hats off to them. And finally, Madam President, I want to take this opportunity in this forum to congratulate Out Bermuda. Some of us attended the Pride festivities a few weeks ago, going into the first weekend of July. I had the pleasure of being invited and attending along with Minister Tanae Furbett. They hosted an appreciation breakfast this morning for sponsors and supporters. And I just want to put in this forum, hats off to the executive director, Joshua Samuels, and to the board of Out Bermuda. They are doing incredible work in the forum that they are in. And though there is certainly a ways to go in this jurisdiction, I believe, Madam President, that Bermuda is becoming a place where young queer Bermudians are feeling like this is home. Madam President, in the Out Bermuda House presented to me as the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General their policy manifesto, and in it they reference the fact that Bermuda is the first English-speaking Caribbean jurisdiction to decriminalize homosexuality and legally recognize same-sex couples. And they suggest Bermuda has a responsibility to lead by example in advocating for the fair treatment of the LGBTQ plus community across the region. And this is certainly something that will be in front of mind as we think about advocacy in CARICOM and through our other international connections, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkerson. And before I move on, I'd just like to acknowledge the presence of Mr. MP Scott Pierman in the gallery. Welcome to you, sir. Would any other senator care to speak? Senator Tannock, you have the floor.
Yes, just briefly, I did some quick research, and the playing card decks with Cotmatch History Trivia. They also have 5 other decks with Bermuda history, and you can find their resources at bermudatrivia.com. I don't know the company. It's a local company, but anytime we can support locally, I suggest we do so, especially with subjects as interesting as this.
Thank you. With that, would any other senator care to speak at this time? Hearing none, I'll congrats and a bits. And I would just like to acknowledge and to add my support to all the teams, and the congratulations to the Bermuda teams that have participated and won and put Bermuda on the map, I would say. So thank you all for your comments, and we will now move on to adjournment. Madam AG.
Madam President, I move that the Senate adjourn until September 12th. No, I'm sorry. It is September 17th.
Yes, 17th.
It is the House returning on the 12th. We will return on September 17th.
Yes.
My colleague across the aisle looked like I was cutting into his cruise again.
Yes, so
forgive me.
The confirmation is that we will return on September the 17th. Would any senator care to speak on the motion to adjourn? I recognize Senator Foley as the first person who caught my eye.
Thank you, Madam President. And Madam President, and members of Parliament who are in the gallery, Senate colleagues, and the listening public. I always look forward to Cup Match. Even while living abroad, I would also make a point to come home for Cup Match because that was a highlight for me, living abroad and coming home to this beautiful country. When we talk about Bermuda's future, we often talk about budgets. We often talk about policies. We often talk about international business. But the truth is, our greatest resource is our people. Without us, nothing else works. No policy, no plan, no strategy. So I speak here today deeply concerned about a trend that threatens this foundation. More and more Bermudians are leaving our shores, or at least making plans to do so. This isn't just a statistic. It's a story we all know, as I'm certain we all have a friend, a relative, a neighbor, or even a working colleague who has moved away because they felt they had to. Some do leave for school, some for better jobs, and some because of the cost of living has just become too heavy. Now, I had to ask myself first, what is this reality we face? Madam President, earlier this year, the Ministry of Economy and Labor published a position paper on retaining our workforce. It spelled out what many of us already know, and that is Bermuda's population is shrinking. And we are losing talent we desperately need. Now, the research behind that report identified the 5 biggest reasons Bermudians are leaving. 1, the high cost of living, obviously. 2, the difficulty of retiring here. 3, concerns about management of our economy. 4, limited career opportunities. And 5, a lack of quality of life, options, and activities. Now, as I wrote recently in my op-ed on July 7th, entitled Why Bermuda Must Reclaim Its Greatest Resource, I stated, when we allow the pressures of our cost, opportunity, and governance to push Bermudians away, we are draining the very lifeblood of our community. Now, these are not abstract issues. They are, in fact, realities shaping people's lives and decisions right now. So I would like to share a real story regarding the cost of living. Madam President, just last week, I spoke with a young Bermudian couple. Both of them have good jobs and are hardworking, talented people. But they told me they are seriously thinking about moving overseas. Not just because they want to, in fact, they said. This is home, but we don't know if we can afford to stay. The rent takes up half their income. And with the cost of groceries and utilities and so on, they can't imagine ever buying a home or raising a family here. When young families feel they have to leave, that should set off alarm bells for all of us. Because if they leave, we lose not just 2 people, we lose the next generation that would have grown up calling Bermuda home. Now, why does this matter, Madam President? For a country with approximately 60,000 people, losing even a few hundred working age Bermudians every few years is devastating. Now, to me, that's like watching an entire graduating class disappear. When people leave, we don't just lose numbers, we lose experience, creativity, and leadership. Now, even the World Bank has put it plainly that human capital is the most important wealth of a nation. And when it leaves, development slows. Now, I also mentioned in that previous op-ed that our greatest challenge and greatest opportunity lies in how we treat Bermudians. both here and abroad. We cannot afford to take their presence or their contributions for granted. And I believe that now more than ever. Bermudians like myself, we still love this island. Bermudians abroad especially love this island, and they would love to return, but they have, but they need a reason. They need a pathway. They need a real opportunity to come back home. Another story I would like to share regarding career opportunities in Bermuda, Madam President. I met a young Bermudian woman not long ago at a local coffee shop who said to me, if there were real opportunities in Bermuda, I'd love to come back home tomorrow. But instead, she's in Canada, leading major projects while her talent and experience are benefiting someone else's economy. Now, just imagine what she could contribute here if she had the chance. And she's not alone. How many more Bermudians like her are out there? People with world-class skills who would bring that expertise and experience home, if only they saw a place here for themselves. So again, I asked myself, what needs to change? Well, Madam President, the solutions to this challenge are not complicated at all. Well, in theory, but they do require political courage and focus. First, we do have to continue to tackle the cost of living. As we all know, Bermuda is consistently ranked among the most expensive places in the world. If young professionals, even those working full-time, cannot afford to pay rent, let alone buy a home, they will, in fact, look elsewhere. Second, we need to create a meaningful career pathway. That means continuing to support local businesses, investing in industries where Bermudians can lead, and making entrepreneurship a viable option, not just a dream. Third, we must rethink retirement. Our seniors, the people who built this country, in my opinion, should not have to leave Bermuda just to retire with dignity. Fourth, we must engage our diaspora. There are over 70% of Bermudians abroad, according to recent research, have expressed interest in contributing to Bermuda's growth, if we build the right channels for them to do so. And finally, Madam President, we need a culture of innovation. Small nations like Singapore and Estonia, in fact, have proven that you can overcome size and geographic location. How? By investing in local talent and technology. And I do believe Bermuda can do the same. Now, from a retiree's perspective, Madam President, not long ago, I did hear from a retiree who told me that, well, quote, I never thought I'd have to leave Bermuda to enjoy my retirement. This is my home, but I cannot afford to stay. Now, this is one person who gave their life to building this country. I do understand that this is one story based on their circumstances, and I can only assume there are others. However, if retirees feel pushed out at the very moment they should be enjoying the fruits of their labor, then something is deeply wrong with our approach. Now, on a personal note, Madam President, I know what it means to leave Bermuda for opportunities. I've been there. I know the sacrifices and uncertainty of building a life in another country. But I also know the pull of home, the pull of Bermuda, the deep sense of belonging you can't find anywhere else. Now, when I made the decision to return home, it wasn't easy. I didn't just wake up one morning and say, okay, I'm going to pack up and return home next week or next month. No, it took planning and making sure it was feasible and that I would have total support from my family and friends, and most importantly, I asked myself, would I be able to not just live in Bermuda, but to also thrive? Fortunately for me, I was able to check all of those boxes. However, not everyone has that kind of support in place. Therefore, I can't just assume people will come back because of nostalgia. One Bermudian I spoke with living abroad put it perfectly, and this was a friend of mine. This is a friend of mine. We want to be part of Bermuda's future, but Bermuda needs to show it wants us. Now, I also wrote in the same op-ed, if we truly want to build a sustainable future, we must make Bermuda a place where Bermudians feel wanted, valued, and inspired to return, not simply because it is home, but because it is a place where they can live and thrive. So, in closing, Madam President, Bermuda is at a crossroads, and I know we've heard this saying before. We can either keep watching our people leave, or we can take bold action to make Bermuda a place where our people choose to stay, return, and contribute. This isn't about politics. This is about survival. It's about building a future that includes all Bermudians, no matter where they are today. So I challenge this government and all of us in this chamber, Madam President, to make this issue a national priority. Let's not wait until we've lost too much. Let's act now while we still have the time to turn things around. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Foley. Would any other senator care to speak? Senator Lindsay Simmons, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I wasn't actually going to speak today, but something this morning sparked something in me to speak. Madam President, I just want to, before I begin with my remarks, I just want to say that as somebody with light skin, somebody that is born of a Black Bermudian father, somebody that went to predominantly Black schools. I went to the Barclay Institute.
Senator Lindsay Simmons, I have been aware of the comments that you're about to make, and I would ask that you meet with me afterwards, because I've been forewarned about an issue that you raised.
So I'm not allowed to give my motion to adjourn, is what you're saying?
Not on the matter under which you want to speak to. It's my understanding it is a Bermuda branch issue. It's not an opposition or a government issue.
I'm sorry.
Maybe I need to speak with her aside. I would like to recess for 2 minutes. Senators, we are back in session, and an issue has been resolved outside of the Senate chamber. Would any other senator care to speak on the motion to adjourn? Senator Fabler, Misha Fabler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Seem to have finally managed to slip it before my colleague on the other side, who often beats me to the punch. And so I'd like to start off by acknowledging, I guess I will lend my support to Somerset, as I'm here decked out in my traditional red and blue. But I wanted to take a moment before we wrap up for the summer, take our summer recess, to take a look at kind of the reason for the season, as it were. Everyone's been speaking to Cup Match, and just, I guess, for the benefit of someone who's in the listening public who is not already aware, I feel like that's maybe a small demographic, but just in case, right? The origination of Cup Match, the combined holidays of Emancipation and now Mary Prince Day, something I'm very pleased to see we had renamed, although maybe some may feel differently. And so on that note, the origination of Cup Match sits with our friendly societies, including the lodges that began recognizing our emancipation, our liberation, as it were, from enslavement. And they were the Summers Pride of India Lodge, number 899 of St. George's, and the Victoria and Albert Lodge, number 1027 of Somerset. And they are both under the banner of the Grand United Order of Odd Fellows. And in preparation for my statement today, I went back, wanted to kind of brush up, as it were, on my understanding of the friendly societies. I have a familial connection. I think it's great uncle Clarence Orster Darrell was influential in that group, and the annual Good Sportsmanship Award that is awarded by the friendly societies is something that was made in recognition of his contributions, as well as sponsored by one of his family members. And on that, it is important to call out kind of their ideals, the idea of collective economics. And so I wanted to also make mention of Dr. Bradshaw, who I believe is still the chairman of the Association of Friendly Societies. And also I want to give kudos to the Department of Culture and the National History Museum of Bermuda, who both have content available online. There are some interviews or lectures, or both, some kind of joint, and those two from Dr. Bradshaw that are captured by both of those groups, freely available to the public. I encourage you to watch them. They are informative. And one of the things that I wanted to talk around, right, like one of the core tenets that the collective help group, they were formed primarily by free blacks prior to emancipation, and those who were living in a position of privilege, even though they were still disadvantaged in society, saw the imperative that they offered a helping hand up to their brothers and sisters who were emancipated in 1834. And also interesting to note that for well over 100 years, we celebrated that emancipation through the celebration of emancipation by playing a cricket game, but and having Cup Match. It wasn't until 1947 that it was made a national holiday. So for well over 100 years, we just decided we're going to take the day off. And I think that takes great courage. That should be acknowledged, right? Like living in those times, that would have been risky business to do. And also on that group of free blacks who provided opportunity to their siblings who were then emancipated in 1834 through providing opportunities for employment, credit, so that they could purchase the necessities of life, housing, food, etc., and the accentuation of the need for education, right? And so those kind of core tenets of the friendly society's education and collective help, I want us all to consider and kind of carry through our day-to-day as we go. And then, also I touched on the renaming of the second day of the Cup Match holiday, Mary Prince Day. And for me personally, just, Emancipation Day in 2028 will be August 3rd, which is my daughter's birthday. And then in 2029, that'll be Mary Prince Day, both of those momentous occasions to both celebrate, something that is perpetually notable for us in the country, and also personally significant. And again, coming back to this theme of liberation, I encourage those of us, we're here in the penultimate week prior to the Cup Match holiday, the week before. I encourage everyone to kind of carry some of those friendly society ideals into how they conduct themselves over the holiday. Some of the groups are known as temperate lodges, right? Like they are discouraging public drunkenness. And while it's Bermuda and we have a culture, I encourage the listening public to think about that and about its effect on our liberation. How liberating is it for us to consume to a state of being unable to conduct our day-to-day activities? How liberating is it for us to, I know I touched on this last week, operate vehicles at breakneck and reckless speeds or in a reckless manner? How liberating is it for us to allow petty differences to devolve into altercations over the weekend? So, give some thought to how you liberate yourself and carry forward that courage that was demonstrated by both the friendly societies and the free blacks of Bermuda for the 113 or so years that we just decided it was going to be a holiday until the government finally caught up. And also on that whole idea of those of us in position of privilege feeling obligated to offer assistance to those less privileged, I wanted to highlight that comment from my colleague, Senator Foley, around we can't just rely on nostalgia for Bermudians to return home. I would posit those of you who have left for education and experience, who have established yourselves as successes, whatever success means to you, that you feel a similar obligation to return home and contribute to the betterment of your island. It's something that I did personally, right? I left in 2002, and it wasn't until 2017 that I was in a position to be able to return. But when I did, I made sure to join local community groups like the board of the Chustik organization, and so that I could share my talent and experience with the island in a way that helps to better it. And I encourage more of us to consider the same. I also would consider my colleagues to move beyond just identifying the problems. I think they are well established. The challenges we are facing around population and immigration, I encourage more proffering of tangible solutions. And so it's not just enough to say that we need to encourage Bermudians to come home or that the government needs to make it a priority, something that I think I wanted to just take slight offense to there. Please take the time in your kind of scrutiny of the government's operations to apprise yourself of the programs that are underway, things that address housing and childcare and access to food and medicine are initiatives that are priorities of the government, all things required for a good society and an attractive one to encourage people to return. And for those of us in the retirement age who are considering standard of living, I also want you to consider that the legacy of colonialization and its impact and your impact in that regard by choosing to take your assets and retire in a region that is possibly less economically developed, because that is an ironic turn of events given our own current situation as a British overseas territory. And also, just to close out, so again, some tangible solutions. I encourage all of us. Dr. Bradshaw mentioned in one of the videos I watched of his in preparation for this statement that, there were double-digit friendly society lodges even in his time of joining. That I think this video was from 2 or 3 years ago. There were only 6 lodges remaining. So get out there and join a lodge. He was made sure to mention that it is not a Black only thing. I think colloquially people think of the friendly societies as like the Black lodges of Bermuda, in contrast to those of the, say, Freemasons as another society of lodges that do community service and collective help. But that is not the case. He has assured us. And so I reached out to someone watch those videos. He provides some mechanisms for contacting the lodges so that even if you are not an active participant in their operations, although I would encourage you to do so, that you are at least helping to fund the continuing existence of them through your membership dues. And in that regard, I've already started the process of joining a lodge myself to that end. And so in closing, I'd like to thank you, Madam President, for allowing me the time to share these thoughts, and I will encourage both my colleagues here and everyone in the general public to carry those ideas of collective help, collective economics, and liberation in front of mind as you make your way through the Cup Match holiday. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Misha Fabler. Senator Cunningham, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you to the speakers before me. I think we're all on the same vein, although mine's going to be slightly more of a tangent. But I think, the reason for the season, and I will say, as we're obviously going on the summer break, that I think Cup Match and the Hurricanes are two of the best times of year that show Bermudians coming together. And I think a lot of what we need to do is come together and, share our culture, share our heritage. And so I want to speak this afternoon about a challenge that I see, but I also see it as an opportunity that faces us, and that's how we support our people in building sustainable careers at every stage of life, so not just our students. And I think because, we say we're serious about national development, but we've got to be also very serious about human development. As people may be aware, over the past decade or decades, I've had the privilege of working with hundreds of Bermudian students and some adults looking to reskill and pivot. But they're all part of a story, and that's Bermudians who are trying to grow and contribute to our society and basically secure their future in our country. But a lot of times that journey is harder than it should be. But if we talk about our youth, this summer, it's the summer holidays. Hundreds of Bermudian students are likely participating in internships across a wide range of industries, and they are, talented, ambitious, and committed to what their future, and hopefully their future in Bermuda. But I'm not sure that talent is enough, because access is what matters. So it's access, it's networks, it's the confidence of these young people. And a lot of times you see that some of our students do not have the same chance as everyone else to get through that door. I think that reality was echoed in the recent immigration survey, which found that many young Bermudians are leaving